Good morning from Hopalong Hollow. Today on our morning coffee walk, we're in the potager, actually starting on the porch. And we're going to take a look at these ranunculus that we put in pots a couple weeks ago. And they are coming up. Now, last year when I planted these, I planted them in trays and I put them really close together and then transplanted them into pots. But they died, every one of them, when I put them in the pots. So this year I just put them straight into the pots, the tubers straight into the pots. And hopefully this time they'll make it. I don't know what happened in that situation, but you can see them just popping up here and there. And I probably put, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 in each pot, which is quite a bit. Some are a little quicker than others, but they're looking pretty good. And this is a violet ranunculus, every one of them. And once they're starting to really grow, then I'll put them out somewhere in the garden. These are some of the sweet peas, looking grand, looking grand. I've already pinched these out, and they're starting to branch out a little bit. And as with everything, some are slower than others. Here we are, a couple weeks later, and these are just now germinating here in this cup. So you have to experiment with different kinds of peas and see what works out for you. Generally, when I walk around the garden, I am just holding this camera in my hand. I have a gimbal, a really good one, a really expensive one, that I have never been able to properly set up. So if my camera work is a little bit shoddy and shaky, that's why I really need to learn how to do that. Now you are looking at something I love, talk about it all the time. This is evening primrose pink. And it grows everywhere in the potager. I let it come up through the sidewalks. I let it go crazy along the borders. I let it do that because when it blooms, it's gorgeous. So it is one of the few things that I allow to grow in the cracks. But in the morning time, I come along usually and I start picking weeds about anything that I don't like. There we have a dandelion, and this is a daisy. I will pick that up, pull that out, and move it to another garden. I let the sedum just grow along the edge as well because it's so very, very beautiful. And if you ever want it anywhere else, you just grab a handful of it, you toss it in another garden, and you can start it everywhere. This stuff is just incredible. I think all succulents and sedums are just incredible. Now I plant everything from seed that I can possibly plant from seed. But when it comes to some things, if they're inexpensive enough, I just buy them like this in trays. And that's the case with these tomatoes, these peppers, these cucumbers. Got a little cold last night, so these are wilting a bit. They're probably not ready to put in. I should take these back in the house. However, this was some $20 for this whole tray. This is full of plants. And I am just not going to plant from seed if I don't have to, if it's inexpensive enough. Here, these little trays were $2.25 a piece. There's 4 peppers in each tray, and I'm going to put them right down the row here with the peppers where the stepping stones are. Because in this row of beets, which will not be ready to harvest for ages and ages, and onions, and here we have a nice row of snap peas, doing really good. So if I plant these right down the middle, and these won't be ready for quite some time either. There's no reason for me to have to even walk into this raised bed, but I can get in there well enough to weed it. Now the peas are doing well, and once they started to grow, I started to stick these twigs in so that they could grab a hold of those twigs, twist around them, and start to climb onto the trellis. Strawberries and primroses. And I'm just sitting here in my favorite position on the brick walkway. The brick walkway inundated with little pink primroses. Just wait till you see them in a few weeks. It's just going to be amazing. But here along this bed, which is also full of primroses, it's also starting to get the Swiss chard that I put in. My goodness, I planted this seed at least 3 weeks ago. It's poking along, but it's in a nice spot because it's actually kind of cool in this area. And lettuces, of course, and chards, they don't like it hot. This gets a lot of shade in the afternoons. It's a really good spot for it. And the snow peas are looking good. I think peas have the most beautiful leaves, both in color and in shape. And they are climbing up the twigs now and hopefully getting ready to climb these trellises. So here in the corner is a supposedly dwarf peach tree. No, it is not a dwarf. I paid for a dwarf, but I think I got a standard size peach tree. In the first year it grew abundant peaches. Its first year. Last year, nothing. In fact, we got no fruit off of any trees at all because we had a late freeze which just destroyed all the blossoms on all the fruit trees. This year, I think we'll be okay. And this is the third year for that tree. Here's one of the Peabody boys, and I can't tell you who it is because they all look identical. I've never been able to tell them apart. I will give you some sad news, though, for me anyway. I lost a Peabody boy about 2 months ago. He just got very, very ill, and then he died. But he was I think he was my 14-year-old Peabody boy, and he was my oldest guy. He was the father of the other 3 boys here. And then, in the last month, a predator has been coming on the property and has taken 2 of my ducks and my favorite little goose, Alice. So that's been very disappointing. And normally our dogs would be taking care of this problem, but I don't know. They're getting old. They're 8 years old. They're brothers. This is Keats. And I have had people commenting on his skin condition because he does have a skin condition here. I will tell you right now, this isn't mange. He is allergic to something on the property. We've been working with the vet to try to figure out what is his problem. He's on medications. He's on anti-itching medication, and he gets 3 baths a week. The peonies. Now, this is a peony bed, and I'd say this peony plant is probably the oldest plant that I have here because I planted it over 15 years ago. But when I planted it, I was new to gardening. I didn't know what I was doing, and I planted it so deep. It's supposed to be right up at the surface, but I planted it probably a foot deep. I didn't know what I was doing, and then forgot about it. For years, it never showed up. For years and years, I never saw it. And then all of a sudden, I guess about 6 years ago, it broke through the surface, it made it to the top, and it's been blooming ever since. But these have a lot of buds on them, and I gave them a good fish fertilizer right away in the season when they first started coming out of the ground, and I think it has made a huge difference in their buds because I am getting all kinds of flower buds on these. And this is just really a wildish garden which gets a lot of shade. Now this is the Frog Pond garden, and on the lower level here, where it's just got abundant growth, the tulips have already bloomed, the daffodils have already bloomed, the Spanish bluebells, some are starting to bloom and some have already bloomed. Interspersed among those are my prize. These are my Canterbury Bells that I planted from teeny tiny seedlings raised in the nursery beds last year. They didn't do anything last year but grow, and now they're nice and tall, and you can see them all throughout this particular section. So those Canterbury Bells should be the star of this particular sidewalk garden. And then hiding down here in the midst of it all are the returning bellflowers. Those are also gorgeous, and they are 2-year plants that I put in. Well, I put them in 2 years ago, actually. They did very well last year. They're perennials, so they're coming back. But the Canterbury Bells are not perennial. They are biennials. They grow the first year, bloom the second, and then produce seed and die. So this is something, if I like the look of this, I'm going to have to put these in every year. But there's an abundance of them. Now, all my gardens are basically cottage gardens. There are no rules. Roses, violets, spider plant, spiderwort, roses, poppies, 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 roses. This could be a troublemaker right here. Loosestrife. I planted it here, but it really gets tall. I might have to cut it down. Poppies, poppies, roses. Oh, how lovely.